The day after Big Cat Weekend, but we're still talking about commitments from this huge Auburn recruiting event. We're going to talk about commitment number 4 that happened on that day, give you the ins and the outs, the things you need to know, and of course, what it means for Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. Let's get into it right now. War Eagle Auburn family and a special War Eagle and welcome to those of you that consider yourselves part of our E2C Network family, the best little family within the Auburn family. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're watching live or on the replay. Got some good stuff to talk about today, and we appreciate you being here, however you got here. Big Cat Weekend, folks. Are you done yet? Are you tired of us talking about it? Well, you shouldn't be, because even though this will be the last one that we do an individual one for, it wasn't the last thing that happened on Big Cat Weekend. We'll talk about why this is the last one at the end of the stream. But for now, we just want to talk about this one fact. The number 4 commitment from Big Cat Weekend, which was Blake Woodby, part of the 2025 class, who comes in as a defensive back. Of course, we want to dive into the facts that you need to know about him right now and the implications, what it means for him, the team, the recruiting class, all of those things. We're going to try to cover that in a very quick fashion for you here right now. Just as a quick step back for a second, I want to remind you, if you're not aware, Big Cat Weekend is one of the most important recruiting weekends of the year for Auburn football. And they made a huge one today. Some people are even saying that work in the space a lot, that this is the best that they have ever seen, at least in terms of the initial payoff of Big Cat Weekend. There's always dividends that come in later from people attending this event, but the fact that Auburn is talking about 5 commitments, we're talking about number 4 today from this particular event, is absolutely incredible. So if you're interested, please do go back and check out some of our other live streams that we have already done for you about some of the previous commitments, whether it was Hezekiah Harris, whether it was Shadarius Tootle, or LaMichael Garrett, who was one of the, I think, ones that really got this going. I think some of these were expected. Most of these were expected, but I think that one is where it really started sending things into overdrive for people. All those were from the 2026 class. Today, we're talking about 2025. And this particular one, Blake Woodby, who is another one that I think a lot of people have been expecting for a while to commit to Auburn. To back up a little bit with his background, this is the guy that is from Maryland, and he's been committed to Ohio State up until about May, and has taken several Auburn visits, other visits elsewhere, kind of reevaluating his take there. Obviously, you know that he would be high on the board for Maryland, teams up in that region. I saw Cincinnati had a lot of interest. He took visits there, it seems like. But it does seem like the biggest competitive teams for Auburn in this, outside of maybe recommitting to Ohio State, was going to be Maryland, was going to be potentially someone like Oregon, who's in the mix. I saw being reported out there too. But Auburn wins this battle and goes up to an untraditional territory and gets a really big commitment that a lot of people are excited about for the 2025 class. So listed as a defensive back, let me give you some information on him, some measurables. Depending on which site you go look at, you're going to find differing things, but we'll give you the best estimation of all those things that you need to know. He is listed somewhere between 5'10" and 175, 180, 185 pounds, somewhere in that range. And most people list him as a cornerback, it seems like, where he will likely play. When you look at measurables, that does tend to line up with what we conventionally think of as a cornerback rather than a safety or something like that. Doesn't always translate that way, but traditionally, this is what we think of. So cornerback is definitely where you can put him in right now. He's part of the 2025 class from Baltimore, Maryland, plays for St. Francis Academy. That should sound familiar to you. Why? Because Bryce Diaz, who is already here as part of this class in 2025, his teammate, obviously probably helped him arrive here at Auburn. We're not done with the interesting stories within this. You'll know that defensive coordinator at Auburn, DJ Durkin, obviously was the former head coach at Maryland. You can probably plan to expect that he had a hand in getting this one, with having ties up there still, I'm sure. But this definitely falls under the purview of Wesley McGriff, cornerbacks coach at Auburn. So a lot of hands on deck, essentially, to get this commitment for the 2025 class. And this is a time where the 2025 class needed a little bit of momentum after a very slow few weeks and months over the past several weeks and months, I guess is what I'm getting at to you. Depending on which site you look at, most people have him as a 4-star if you care about those type of things. It definitely gives the 2025 class that next boost it needed to get going into the next wave of this recruiting cycle. So those are probably the main things you need to know. Maybe some other notes. He's a track and field athlete. Apparently owns the record for, I think, the 100-meter hurdle or something like that, or just the 100 meters. He can jump. He can run. That's what you want your cornerbacks to be able to do, no matter what their size. Their athleticism's got to come into play when you're playing these humongous wide receivers in the SEC especially, but in college football. So those would be the main points to know about him right now. We are still waiting for him to finish his senior year. I'm not sure if he's an early enrollee or not, but part of the class for now. Trust him that he maintains that commitment and will move forward with that knowledge. Let's talk about what it means now, what it means for him, the team, the recruiting class. Let's start with the recruiting class. Where does this bring us to in the recruiting class for Auburn 2025? If you look at the board right now, and this is obviously at the time of his commitment, there's something I'll address at the end of the show that changes things. He was number 17 overall in the class. That is the 2025 class. So it is starting to get pretty full, but not, I shouldn't say it's pretty busy in terms of the amount of players we have in it, but not maybe full. Other prominent names at the defensive back position would be Eric Winters, who's considered to be a safety, but Blake is definitely up there. Devin Williams is a cornerback, Donovan Starr. You've also got other athletes that may factor somewhere else in defensive backs. Dante Core is another name. So those are ones that you want to keep in mind when it comes to that particular position, defensive backs and cornerbacks. So it's getting, again, I don't want to say full, but there are a lot of names, especially at the cornerback position, that potentially factor into this class. Let's talk about, obviously, what it means for this Auburn football team and what we can kind of glean from what we currently know about the team. Who are we going to be losing? Who's coming in? It's much easier to have this conversation than with some of the 2026 commitments we were talking about yesterday, because obviously there's still a humongous amount of time to be thinking about those things. We look at the depth chart now. You're going to look at cornerbacks and see a couple of prominent names. You've got Keontae Scott, and you've got Kayan Lee, who are going to be your two cornerbacks, at least anticipated right now. Keontae Scott will be gone after this year, but you still got Antonio Kite, who just got here at the cornerback position, who will likely be factoring there. Jay Crawford as well, who will be factoring in at cornerback as a freshman. J.C. Hart is still here. So you've got a few names, at least at the cornerback position, that are still going to be around. So when we ask the question, how quickly does he factor into the rotation, the depth chart, I always stress that you guys not anticipate these guys to jump right in. They're very rare that they do. Not everybody can be, as we seem to be building this kid up, a Cam Coleman. But it does seem, at least with Keontae Scott leaving, there's obviously room for somebody else to take his stead. And we've seen freshmen do that before. Kayan Lee is an example of that, who came in last year as a freshman and earned some significant playing time. So you just never know, but he's definitely got some of the depth that he's got to work through, that it's going to at least been here for a year plus to have to play behind and work his way through in practice. And that's maybe how it'll factor in. Coming out of Maryland, it's not traditionally a place that we recruit a whole lot. Having DJ Durkin on staff is not going to hurt that with his ties back up to Maryland, good or bad, however you would like to take that. People sometimes don't know how to keep it focused on the story that we're mainly talking about here, not the related things. But obviously great to see Auburn go outside its traditional core of Georgia, Florida, the rest of the Southeast, and go up more towards the Northeast, the Midwest, that area, and snag somebody out of there that is a highly coveted one. Names like Oregon, names like Maryland, Ohio State, at least at one point wanted him. So huge get for Auburn, and it could have implications in regards to other people that are currently committed up into that area as well. We just never know. But obviously helping build a pipeline up there is important. And lastly, what does this mean for the class? We kind of already touched on it. There are a lot of cornerbacks in this class already, but there's going to be probably some spaces available for playing time here. Does this mean that we are done? I don't know. I would say, looking at numbers wise, it looks like that could get a little bit not as open of space. But the great thing about this is that we have opportunities for guys to switch around at defensive back positions. We saw Jalen Simpson go from cornerback to safety when he's more of a traditional cornerback in what people think of him. So it's definitely something where I would say we are not done yet, but you never know, right? It's all just guessing at this point. So those are the facts that you need to know. Those are the things about what it means for him, the team, the recruiting class going forward. Hope you guys took a little bit of information from that. Lastly, we will not be doing a stream in regards to double flip, triple flip Antonio Coleman. Not because we're not excited about him. He was the 5th commit and flip from Alabama on Big Cat Weekend. But as you've probably anticipated, the guy seems to be having a hard time making up his mind, which we love and are glad to be on that other side of it now. But I would say it's probably the best caution that we can not to invest a ton of time in that until we're pretty sure with where he's at in regards to his decision-making process. There has been a live stream, I believe, previously where we did when he initially flipped the first time to Auburn and then before he flipped back to Alabama. So if you want information on that, go back a few months and you'll find that there available for you. But still super excited for him, but mainly today and in this video focused on Blake Woodby. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, spending some time, being part of our little family within the Auburn family. Thank you for tuning in. Until we talk to you again. War Eagle.